in which we can translate a number of complex associations and attitudes over a relatively universal, relatable method. I mean, people, like I said before, storytelling is rather intrinsic, and it's easy for people to pick up on these things. Now, a lot of people say that the most effective storytelling is when it overlaps with the customer's value-based worldview, but I find the easier way to think of this is that the best stories are when the brand achieves a tangible emotional connection with the customer themselves. So, storytelling is, of course, a process, and we did talk a little bit about this earlier today, so I won't go into too many details, but branding, of course, would be the area where you articulate the values and the actual identity that you want to have, sort of fueling your story and fueling your company. Storytelling would be either adopting a narrative or actually publishing that narrative in order to, reach your target customers who, in turn, after a period of time, would go back and inform your brand. As we all know, they change and, evolve over time. And this, used to take a while, a period of weeks and months and years, and then as we all know, this social media thing happened, and then it all came and attacked everybody, and everything started blowing up, and people said, oh, other people are telling my story, I have no control, how am I going to tell my story, I don't know what the Twitter is, everything is over, it's terrible and everything. But as we all know, this isn't true, because we're all sitting here right now. So, social media, when it's used properly in conjunction with storytelling as well as effective marketing, it just sort of changes things a little bit. And the way that it does that is that it blurs the lines of authorship in the sense that before a company or a brand manager would be the sole person that would be getting a story out to people. Now we have customers and we have observers and other people coming in and adding to it. So they're extending the story, they're approaching it from different angles, they're sort of fleshing things out, and through doing this, they can create a much sort of richer story that can connect with people on a little bit of a deeper level. And of course, as you know, there's a temporal shift. Instead of there being a bit of lag time between a story coming out and customers reporting, it's happening all day, every day, 24 hours, very quickly. So through this series of direct conversations, there's the element of co-creation that we discussed before. And there is this, loss of control. But when you weigh that against the benefits of participation, namely these emotional connections and people becoming, really involved with your brand, it is a pretty worthwhile trade-off that companies really should assess to make sure that it's right for them. And when doing so, I've kind of put together a list from the research that I did. Hopefully this will help people when we're designing our own campaigns, about some general guidelines in terms of actually managing your story through social media. So we've covered some of these before, but I'll go quickly. So the first one is to understand and respect your audience, and more importantly than that, to understand their values and the values that they see linking up with yours and the ones that fit within your story. You should, again, do this through a clear vision, and you should make sure that this is consistent, whether you're using social media to sort of augment a traditional campaign with television commercials or something with Twitter. You should just make sure that they're pointing towards the same story and the same idea. You also want to make sure that this story accurately reflects who you are as a company. We've spoken before about how people feel when they perceive a message to be marketed at them or inauthentic, and how that just basically gets you reviled and ruins your reputation. And finally, you don't want to shut down the story before other people are ready for you to do so. Once people have, again, as Christina was mentioning, adopted a story into their own personal narratives to sort of drive their own personal plot, speak to their own identities, people don't really like having that hijacked in ways that they're not really expecting, because not only does it change everything that they knew, but it kind of changes themselves a little bit. So basically this comes down to one main point here that I want to say. Storytelling is effective because of these connections that they make. When you're developing your social media story strategy, what you always want to do is be mindful of these connections and always put yourself in the community or the consumer's shoes and just make sure that the things that you're doing tie into there. Now, and of course, if you do that, then you have this. So an example of a company that I believe is doing this exceptionally well at this point is the Patagonia clothing company. Now, they start out with a very interesting origin that it's a narrative built around a bunch of friends getting together in a tin shed on the side of a mountain, putting together clothes and formulating ice axes and things like that. But there's also a spirit of adventure and environmentalism, and there's a bunch of values in there that they hold and they express through this story. And over the years, this is about 40 years old, the story. Over the years, they begin to augment this by turning this tin shed into an interactive platform at which they can have co-creators that are either employees or customers send out these things that are called dispatches, and basically the videos or reports that sort of embody the spirit of the company. So be they environmental or be they, I'm surfing and it's kind of extreme, to, hey, check out how awesome my jacket is working. Also very active on their blogs, Twitter, where they respond to people's concerns and complaints at a very rapid rate, actually, and they also are very active on YouTube, where they post videos about the business, but they also post videos that aren't related to the business. They post videos that can somehow tie into the values and the stories and the things that they've sort of put forward. So it's a very interesting way that they do that. And just to their stuff is successful. So as I said before, they have a very clear story. It does have origin, hero elements, but again, that's part of the narrative. They have conflicts, so it's interesting, but again, it's consistent and it's clear. When it comes to the actual social media itself, they do solicit their co-creation, and this isn't necessarily rewarding people monetarily, but it's providing them a platform with which the things that they create can be seen. They also respect their audience, and they've always, more or less got their finger on the pulse of what's important to them, and making sure that their values, or at least the stories that they're putting out, are aligning with both them of the company and the community. They mitigate complaints very quickly, often proactively, so as to not, have other influencing factors come in and change the story. And they, again, approach the same story from new angles. There's an example where most of their environmental videos are very serious in tone. However, they have this one, he's like Captain Underpants, running around in a fake Stephen Colbert outfit, basically saying that they have to, and it's a very good point, they're saying that they have to recycle garments because they're running out of it, and it speaks directly to their core values, directly to their core story, but they're doing it in a way that they can actually reach other channels and other communities that might not otherwise have figured that out. So with that, let's just turn it over to some discussion from everybody.